Hello, welcome to Big Bang Radio Spotlights. This is a show where we talk to independent artists from all around the world all about their music and their process for making it. I'm your host, Isaac Anderson, and today I get to sit down with the band Vacation Manor. Without any further ado, here's the interview. Nathan, Cole, thank you guys so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. I want to start at the beginning of each of your musical journeys, just like we do with all the other artists that we talk to on the show. So the first question I'm going to ask both of you is, what is your earliest musical memory?
Ooh, great question. Mine was probably when I was like a young kid, probably younger than 5 even, or maybe like right at 5. We had this little boom box, and I would always just put random CDs in it and ask my parents if I could like pick a song, and I would like grab the boombox, bring it in, and before we'd have dinner, I would like play. For some reason, I would like DJ one song and just pick from random CDs and just put them in there and see what happened. That was kind of like my first memory of like interacting with music.
I didn't even know that one.
Yeah, I just remember that the other day.
Let's see. My first is probably when people would come over to our house growing up. We had this little game called Carom. It's like pool, but tinier with these little plastic pieces. But you have this little stick, and I used to air guitar and perform. For some reason, I remember pretending to play. I forget the name of the song. It was a Dave Matthews song, and I remember standing up on the couch, playing with the little stick like it was my guitar and just trying to put on a show.
Was anybody in your family musical, or is this just something you guys picked up on your own?
My family wasn't musical. I don't even know if my brother, he plays guitar, so we kind of both like started dabbling in instruments right around the same time. But I don't have like any like parents that like played music, or even like any uncles that I can think of. So it just, I think, kind of started with me. But as far as I know, maybe there's someone out there that I haven't met yet. But
for me, my mom is a piano teacher and also was a percussionist in the church orchestra. So another early memory I have is waiting until everybody would clear out of church, like just enough people, and then I would go back into the orchestra pit and start playing the drums. And yeah, so I guess music was around in terms of like playing it, and like we always had a piano in the house and stuff like that. My parents weren't big music listeners, so a lot of my musical influences that probably stick with me more now, I developed later on. But definitely just the tactile wanting to play music kind of thing came on pretty early.
Heard that. Well, who are some of those early influences that you guys kind of took as kind of fuel to your musical fire?
The stuff that has stuck with me is like, honestly, a lot of times from movies. Like, that's the first time I remember hearing James Taylor was watching Remember the Titans when I was a kid. And I always remember like, oh, I love that song. But it wasn't until like years later that I would go like listen to the whole record and everything and realize like, oh yeah, this guy's whole career is great. So I think stuff like that has stuck with me. I remember being like 10 and hearing John Mayer on the radio and thinking like, I like that song. But again, like it wasn't until high school I really dove into those records. And yeah, so I think those are the ones that have kind of like stuck through the test of time with me.
Yeah, I think for me, it was pretty much just stuff that my parents were really into. And they definitely at the time liked some stuff that as a kid I did not like. But there's some of it that I did. Like my mom really loved like Aretha Franklin and Stevie Wonder and all those kind of folks. And so, yeah, grew up listening to a lot of that and enjoying it. And then my dad's like a big Eagles fan, Steely Dan, all that stuff from California, like in the 70s. So I definitely loved all that stuff. So I think that was, and I still listen to all of those artists. So those are probably the earliest ones that I can remember that I'm like, that I still listen to and keep up with.
Looking at videos and listening to your music, it looks like you guys have an awesome dichotomy and you guys get along super well and you bounce off each other in a really awesome way. I'm just curious, how exactly did you two run into each other for the first time?
Oh God, I mean, it pretty much was whenever
an
we
accident.
were, yeah, it was kind of an accident. I had definitely seen, there was this music festival that used to happen in our in the town that we live in right now. And the first time I ever saw Nathan, I didn't meet him this day, but he was playing drums for another band at this festival that I was also playing at.
And I saw him playing drums for another band.
Yeah.
So we were both drummers at the
we
time.
were both drummers at the time. Yeah. So it was funny because I saw him, but we didn't meet, like we didn't connect or anything that day. But then pretty much the first time we met was when we were pretty much starting the band. We were practicing for what was going to be our first show.
It was probably 2 months after that.
Mm-hmm.
He was living here in Virginia and I was up in the DC area where I grew up. And I saw a sign up for a battle of the bands at my college. So I put my name down, not having a band to play with. And I just decided it would be like a good push to finish some of the songs that I've been working on. So one of the guys that I played with in the band at that festival, he was a bass player. And I was like, could you see if there's a drummer who would want to come up and play? I'll give you guys gas money to come up here and play with me for this thing. So I think like the 10th person he called was you, because he barely knew you.
Yeah, we had barely met before. So I was kind of like I was not the first choice.
Mm-hmm.
But
and then we practiced on a Friday, played the Battle of the Bands on a Saturday, won the Battle of the Bands, and decided to keep playing shows that night. And we came up with a band name, which was not Vacation Manor at the time. And yeah, so quite literally, we met the day before we started the band.
Well, what was the original name, if you don't mind saying?
Native Spirit.
Ooh,
it
same kind of timbre on it. You know, I dig it. Cool. Vacation Manor is an awesome name too.
But yeah, I think that's just been like we would do all kinds of stuff when we first started playing together. We were kind of a long distance band for the first year. I was still up in the DC area and then moved down a year later. And we would we'd play like bar gigs where we just did 3 hours of covers, and I would just kind of call out the song and Cole may or may not know it. And I think a lot of that, like as far as playing live, I think that actually helped us a ton because, and in the writing space too, because Cole just has like an extra sense for knowing where I'm going to go with something next. So it's just, yeah, you can't really replace the amount of hours put in playing together. You just learn to read each other.
All I ever wanted is to see this through, but I'm tired of wearing a parachute. I wanna let my feet hit the ground before you let me down. Running in circles, going crazy in my own mind. I know we'll make it, but I still need you to sing it. You got the blues in the ocean air. New pair of shoes and you colored your hair. It's just the way that the story goes. Honey, you can't run forever.
We have a history, you and I know you don't know this, but I know I mentioned this before the interview. My best friend in the world, Alex Ragland, is a musician, and he absolutely loves you guys, and he brings your music in whenever we record stuff, and he wants to use you guys as reference. And your music has always kind of been in the back of my head. And when we booked this interview, it was like rekindling an old flame. Like, oh my goodness! I'm like, I forgot how awesome these guys were, and I just started devouring everything you guys had. And it's amazing how infectious your music is, because it's just constantly stuck in my head after I started doing research on you guys. And I'm just curious, as musicians and songwriters, how exactly do you guys write your music? Like, do you guys get in the room together and write, or do you guys tend to write individually and then bring them to each other?
It's kind of both of those things. I don't know that we have a set process, but maybe the most consistent one is just jamming on stuff. We still like kind of keeping that old school, I guess, the old school way of doing things, kind of like we have a studio set up here now, but it almost is 100% of the time feels much better to write a song together, just the two of us playing live, and then take it to a track. And not, we've never loved building a track as we're writing as much, just because, you know, you have to go out and play that live later, and you want it to feel as good live as it does in the studio. So I think, yeah, if something feels catchy between, if it's just me on a guitar and a mic and Cole on drums, if it feels like there's a guitar hook here and a melody and a groove that is already pretty infectious, then chances are it's just going to be that times 10 once we bring all of the recorded elements into it.
When it comes to lyrics and everything, and because that's another thing I really liked about your music, was it's not only awesome musically, but it's really engaging lyrically, and it really hooks me from a songwriting perspective on that level too. When you guys write the lyrics, do you tend to have like a pretty set way you like writing lyrics from? Like, do you like doing them from like personal experience, figurative stories, or are you much more about phonetics? I don't know. How exactly does that work for you guys?
It's mostly been, in some sense, personal experience. I always hesitate to say that because there's, I don't know, when you're writing, you're almost, it might start with a story, but you elaborate on it. And like, so not everything is a direct reflection of exact experiences. Most things are inspired by that, I think, in some way. And then like, there's some stuff like our song Can't Run Forever came out early this year, and it was totally just a made up story. It was just kind of like picking a character and writing into that. And that was really fun to kind of get out of the writing from experience perspective. But I think most of the time, yeah, there is something, when I look back over my lyrics, I kind of think it feels like a timeline of my life and some of our shared experiences just over the past 7 years of being a band. So yeah, I would say I draw pretty heavily from that. And some things also don't make sense. Like there are some songs where the lyrics feel like the right thing, and I try to figure out what that means later, or there's some sort of value assigned to that later on. And sometimes that feels like the right way to go, and that really communicates emotionally more than something that would be airtight and making a ton of sense.
I want to hop onto your location right now. So you guys are in Lynchburg, Virginia, I believe. How exactly has that area influenced your sound and your musicality? And what is the music scene like there? A lot of people would associate, all these these big staple cities like New York and Nashville as like these music cities, but Lynchburg has a killer scene from what I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, especially once we started the band, it had a big influence on us, mostly just from like how we would go about just like being a band, because there was places to play and there was a lot of other great bands around, a lot of cool venues. So at the start, we really were just trying to basically just have enough songs to be able to go out and play a show. So at the beginning, yeah, it was really influential. Just like having somewhere that you can go and meet peers and meet other people that play music was really encouraging, and just a big motivator for us to keep writing songs. But as far as the scene currently, there's definitely still some great bands around, but it's not, it's a little bit different. It definitely had, at least it felt like it had more of a heyday, maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's just different now. But when we were first starting, it was really something special, which was cool because it was, a small town. So it felt like, in a healthy way, it did feel a little bit like if you got good, you could kind of be a little bit of a big deal and kind of like win over your hometown, and which is just a great feeling, and it was just encouraging.
I think that had a ton to do with us starting out. Like that really, I don't know. It's kind of like the feeling of like if you're at it would be one thing to be at like an open mic in Nashville or something where anybody, like everyone's going to be fantastic. And there were a lot of great people here at the time, but it felt like there was like that, I I guess just kind of confidence to be like, oh yeah, I mean, we have songs, like, let's just go out and play them and see what happens. And it kind of feels, I think in a small town, it feels like you can just kind of do anything. So I think that mixed with it being received well at the beginning really helped a lot. And I don't know if there would have been the opportunity and the same confidence to have done that in a bigger city at the time, which I think is really true of anybody. Some people everybody's got to cut their teeth somewhere. But I think that really like felt us or made us feel a lot more comfortable, kind of cutting our teeth in that environment and then being able to go out and play bigger cities.
I believe it was your second EP, Everything I Can't Say Out Loud. You guys went to Joshua Tree out in California for about a week, I believe, and you tracked everything live in that room to tape. Did you guys actually go to did you record like onto tape reels and everything, or was that more of a digital thing?
Oh yeah, I mean it was all completely on tape, like the bones of it. So the bones is in the drums, the main guitar, and some keys and bass. We would do all the tape, and then some stuff we would do after the fact. But the bulk of the song and the core of the song was just done to regular 2-inch tape.
What was that process like recording that album? I watched a little bit of the documentary that you guys have on your YouTube page, and it's a really cool insight of that. But just in your memory, looking back on that experience, what was some big takeaways you got from that?
One big takeaway was just kind of just creating from like a standpoint of one being, I mean, you do have to be prepared, but also just being open to different ideas and to just feel like, I don't know, in some ways it felt like we just didn't have nearly as many rules when we were out there. Like it just felt like you could, like if there was an accident or if something was a little bit messed up or a little bit wrong, it felt like that was okay. And we kind of embraced some of the imperfections of things. And if somebody was rushing in one section, it just wasn't really a big deal, which sometimes that is definitely a big deal. But something about that environment, I just felt like we learned to just embrace imperfections of things.
Yeah, it definitely helps you get out of your head.
Yeah, because it's so easy to like think that everything needs to be done a certain way. But out there and working with Charlie, the producer that we were working with, he just really helped kind of shape our perspective on what's actually important and what's not important.
Your latest album, which is your debut self-titled album. First off, I want to comment on the album cover. Awesome color palette. I love that. It looks like, I don't know what camera that was used to take that, but like looks like it's got this kind of cool filmic look to it. It looks awesome. I love it. And it's
Thanks, man.
No problem, no problem. And it's got a lot of awesome songs. And we mentioned Can't Run Forever a little earlier in the interview. That was actually one that you guys produced yourself. I believe you said your friend came over and you guys kind of did that and you just kind of fabricated the story over the song and everything. But just the album as a whole and even that song specifically, just because it's something new for you guys, what was the process of making this record like? And what does this record mean to you guys?
I mean, there's a lot of different avenues and a lot of different things that happened during the process of making it, but the bulk of it was done in Nashville with our producer Kyle Cummings, who had done the Girls Say EP, which is like the first thing we put out. So we did the bulk of it, about 9 songs with him. We did 2 songs out in Joshua Tree with Charlie, who we were just talking about, and then Can't Run Forever we did here.
Yeah, so I think there was a lot more detailed thought, whereas on the last record things were just kind of happening and you just trust everybody's choices on it, which is also a great way to do things. But like this record already had in a good way like had its limitations in being just the 2 of us, so it kind of just like it set up this environment for us to really dig into and be perfectionists about every melody and part that was on it. And we were demoing a lot of the songs here at our studio. And then, yeah, it's cool listening back to it now because at the time it felt like like some parts of it were definitely a struggle to get through, and just like, oh man, I feel like we're just like pulling out everything out of ourselves to make these songs right now. And listening back, it feels so much more natural and effortless to me looking back on it. But I think, I don't know, all in all, I think I'm just really proud of us, and like happy that it turned out so well in the middle of COVID, and having some band changes and figuring out different ways of recording, and some of the sessions being spread out over different studios. I'm just really happy with how it sounds, and I think there was just so much care and effort put into every song, and I love going back and hearing that.
Heard that. Well, the record is absolutely wonderful, guys. It's out on streaming. It's out on vinyl. I guess people can go to your website and get that. And if people want to keep up with you guys online, they might maybe want to get the album, maybe want to find out more about you guys. How can they find you online?
Instagram's great. We're very active on there. It's just Vacation Manor on Instagram. We also have a website, www.vacationmanor.com. And then Twitter, we're on Twitter. Where else can they find this? Facebook. Yep, Vacation Manor. Pretty much anything that we're on, it's just under Vacation Manor. So if you search that, we'll come right up.
Guys, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time. But before you go, I've got one more question for you. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a Big Bang Radio Spotlight before, but I'm a musician, but I also love film. And I believe musicians have a soft spot for film that many other people don't really have, and we're connected to it in just a certain way. So I want to ask each of you before you go, what is your favorite movie?
I think mine's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think that's, all things considered, I think it's my favorite movie.
Let's see. If I'm being totally honest, one of my favorite, I don't know what my favorite movie is, but one of my favorites is Sleepless in Seattle. Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks. It's a killer combo.
Thanks to Vacation Manor for sitting down with us and talking all about their music. If you guys want to see more interviews just like this, you can find us online at Studio 67 NCC. Thank you all for watching. I'm Isaac Anderson, and until next time, stay lovely.